me a little bit about yourself and what you advocate for.
About myself, I have a podcast, the Suzanne Venker Show. I am a relationship coach, and I'm an author, and that's essentially what I do. And I had a couple of recent interviews with Alex Clark on her podcast where we talked about motherhood and work-life balance and daycare and the needs of children and all of that, and that kind of went
viral, kind of, basically, right?
It did pretty well.
Yeah.
And then so she had me back on again, and then she invited me to this event. So this is my first time speaking at this event, and I know that they normally have it every year in Dallas, and this is the first time here in San Antonio. So I just came along and about to speak.
Cool. Related to all of that, you're really big on advocating for women to not put motherhood on hold, and oddly, that's like controversial in today's society.
I know.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's been a long and steady path from feminists sort of open up the whole concept of prioritizing career over motherhood, actually a long time ago. But it has taken on a different life in the last 20 years, especially with social media and the speed of technology. And we just live at a time where we're just very focused on the self. It's very individualistic society where the concept of sacrifice, of putting your needs on hold for the sake of really anybody, but especially children, is considered almost retro. But in fact, it's human and normal and good, and it shouldn't change with the times. It is a static, the needs of children are the same today as they were 50 years ago. They're never going to change, and it's up to us to meet those needs when we decide to have a family.
So you see kind of this like reemergence of young women wanting to go trad. Is that a backlash against the feminist movement?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think most women would. I think that's great. I think that's a great choice. I think homeschooling's great. You want to go live off the land, totally support that. I just think that's an extreme reaction. I think it's normal to have an extreme reaction. The pendulum, goes from one to the other, and eventually I'm hoping we're going to sort of get back into the middle where there's a space for you to have your independent life, but it needs to be worked around children, and you don't have to go all the way in and live off the land and homeschool and go, which is great, but that's not the only option, and it's kind of not really going to be most women's option. What
do you think is the one of the most popular pieces of advice that women have been given in today's culture that's dead wrong?
Hookup culture.
Okay, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so just the idea that women should postpone marriage as long as possible, and then in the meantime you have to have some sort of messaging about, well, what are we going to do about sex and relationships? And the only thing that they hear is that dating is dead, and it really has been replaced with this concept of hooking up, which is really just hanging out and getting physical with someone with whom you have no connection. And as though that is a good path, a natural path, and really the only path while you're waiting to supposedly start your life and settle down later in life. And so that's been really destructive for women in particular, for both women and men, but for women in particular, since they're the ones who have a foreshortened time frame in which to map out their lives and need to really start thinking about marriage and children sooner than the average guy, because they're the ones who get pregnant and give birth, and they're the ones whose lives change the most.
Yeah, so you've talked about how a men's life is more linear, ours is more seasonal.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that? Because so many women they're like, I want it all.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
And the answer is that you can have it all if you look at your life in one long, if you're looking at the long road, you're playing the long game. And a woman's life has seasons in a way that a man's does not. Theirs is more linear because they're not the ones who get pregnant or give birth or even really nest in the same way in those early years when mom is home with a baby. So you're going to have that interruption, if you will, or that pause, let's call it a pause, in your plan that a man won't have. And so to map out your life in the same way that a man does is really going to hurt you down the road, which is basically what I'm talking about today in my talk, because that's what the culture teaches, to just map out your life as though you're no different from a man.
Yeah, because do you see more young women and women in, going into their 30s unhappy, and it's almost because we've been told, oh, map out your life like a man, and they're starting to realize, oh no.
Yeah, right. And those are the ones who call me for coaching, and I'm trying to keep people, believe it or not, from having to call me when they're 30, 31, 32 and say, oh my God, either I haven't found a man or I'm married and I want to stay home, but I can't financially because my husband doesn't make enough money, or we bought a house based on 2 incomes. We shouldn't have done that. Again, that's going to go into the message that I'm going to talk about today, is there's a whole nother way to do life than the way the culture teaches that will set you up for success rather than failure.
So you think the earlier women hear this, the better?
100%.
Right?
I mean, it can't be too early. 18 isn't even too early.
What do you say to women who are like, I want to be at home, but this economy's terrible. I have to work too. What do you
mean
say
if they're already married with kids?
Yes.
Then so, not to keep coming back to this, but I'm going to be talking about that today, about doing a cost-benefit analysis of what it really looks like, one income versus 2, and how much more a one income is feasible than people think, and that it can actually be costly to have a second income. So I'm going to go through all of that, and I think that's it's certainly not promoted in society, so you're not going to hear it there. But in the early years in particular, so many people are working for what amounts to maybe $10,000 extra when you factor in all of those costs. Childcare being, of course, the most expensive.
So the theme of this whole event is, women getting back to their roots. What does that mean to you?
Understanding that women are women and men are men, and that's okay, and that's a good thing, and we can capitalize on that and be complementary and accept the body God gave us and work with it rather than against it, and you will be successful than if you're constantly fighting it, which is really what this is at the core. That culture's teaching is you to fight the way things are, as if you have the power to change something as powerful as human nature, which we don't. So I'm kind of saying, forget all that. Work with it. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing.
I know this might be hard to answer, but at the end of the day, what do you think it is that truly fulfills and empowers women?
Oh, their relationships. They're strong relationships. The stronger they are, the more powerful you will feel. The weaker they are, the less powerful you will feel. Because it doesn't really come from money and status. That's not where most women, there's exceptions, but where most women get their true meaning and fulfillment. And I would say the same for men. It's just that men have that provider gene in them that women don't, that causes them to have a greater drive to take care of their family, that's part of their overall mission, that isn't really in most women.